My name is Graham, and I am a cybercrime researcher here in the CTU KIC at Secureworks. I develop and maintain botnet emulators, which allows us to gather intelligence on prevalent malware threats. I've had a bit of a cold recently, so I hope my voice makes it through today. Please excuse me if I have to take a drink or descend into a coughing episode. It'll probably look more dramatic than what it actually is. To start, I'm going to assume that some of you here today, in recent times, have received a text message that looks a little bit like what I have on the screen here. It was no different for us in the CTU. Many of us recently started to receive these too. And if we're receiving these text messages, then we can be pretty confident that it's reaching our client base as well. All these text messages here are related to a relatively new threat called Flubot. It was first discovered in December 2020, and it targets Android mobile devices. Before we talk about Flubot, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our botnet emulation program. Emulating botnets gives us near real-time access to high fidelity indicators. Botnet emulation is the practice of deconstructing or reverse engineering a piece of malware and replicating the network traffic in order to look like an infected device. By using a programming language such as Python, we can interact with criminal infrastructure in a controlled, safe environment. And by interacting with the threat actor's infrastructure, it gives us lots of insights. As we receive indicators, we're able to automate the processing of these that will ultimately reach our client base. And from a threat intelligence perspective, we can gain lots of insights as to how the threat actors are conducting their operations. And that means we can react to any changes where we need to either maintain or create new countermeasures. When we look at emulating botnets, we first need to determine a few things. Main thing for us is looking at prevalence. We need to determine how far-reaching a threat is. For example, how its distribution operations work. In this case, Flubot, it has a self-propagation method. We also need to look at design, whether there's a feedback loop that we can capitalize on and remain operating within the botnet without too much maintenance. Also, the threat needs to be emerging. It needs to have a fast development life cycle. We need to see it testing new features. And as a cybercrime researcher, we're also looking for motivation as well. Is this threat going to empty a bank account? Is it going to steal sensitive information from the device? Could it be a precursor to another attack, maybe such as a ransomware outbreak? If we look at the Flubot infection chain, to start, a user will receive a text message on their phone, and that will contain a link which they need to click on. This link will direct the user to a download page, and the download page will mimic roughly the theme of the text message. So here we've got a confirmation delivery text message that's taken the user through to a popular courier site. This site will then direct the user to download an application. If this application is downloaded, it will request several permissions to be enabled on the device in order for it to successfully compromise it. If the user goes through all of these stages, then eventually the device becomes compromised and the command and control traffic will ensue. If we look at Flubot's capabilities, it very much aligns with what we expect to see with cybercrime-focused activities. Probably with the exception of the DGA, which is the domain generation algorithm. This isn't quite so prevalent anymore, as it does have its drawbacks, but Flubot appear to be using this to good effect. We've got stealing features such as SMS, contacts, credit cards, and passwords. Flubot can turn the device into an SMS spam bot. This is part of its self-propagation method. It can intercept SMS, both incoming and outgoing, load arbitrary files, and it can also turn the device into a SOX proxy. That's it for the first section. I'm now going to take you through some of the insights we've gained from emulating Flubot. First of all, the DGA. The DGA is a domain generation algorithm that Flubot used to generate 5,000 domains per seed, and these are generated on a monthly basis. So once the mobile device is compromised, a seed would be selected at random, and then it generates 5,000 domains for that seed. This gives a total of 25,000 domains, although only 5,000 would be used on the device. The device will cycle through these randomly until it finds a domain that has been registered by the threat actors and it can communicate successfully with. Now, I mentioned there are some drawbacks to using a DGA, one of which is it can be vulnerable to sinkholing attacks. Now, 25,000 domains might be quite difficult to sinkhole all at once, but it does leave the opportunity for researchers to sinkhole a few of the domains and then gather insights about victimology and some of the operations. Now, in early days, Flubot had 4 TLDs. They had a .com, .ru, .su, and .cm. They eventually removed the .com, and we were left with .ru, .su, and .cn. These TLDs residing in Russia, Soviet Union, and China. In order to register these types of domains, you will need to provide a passport. They may have just left these 3 in order just to deter some researchers who are unwilling to provide their passport to register them. Of the registered domains by the Flubot threat actors, they use a fast flux technology. What this is multiple IPs that are used in a round-robin effect in conjunction with a short time to live. So each time you query the domain, you'll get a new set of IP addresses, and it will probably be interacting with a different IP. Each of these IPs act as a proxy, which forwards connections back to a central command and control. This fast flux is a botnet in itself, and we think that the Flubot actually rents this botnet from another threat group. SMS spam. So this is probably one of the more interesting parts of the botnet that we get to emulate. We get lots of indicators of compromise here, and we get to really peer into the operations. So first thing that will happen is the device will send the contacts list to the command and control. So any friends, family numbers or colleagues that are exfiltrated from the phone, they'll probably get targeted by an SMS message as well. Recently, we saw a tokenized verification method. They put this in place to ensure that the device can actually send SMS messages. You can see in the top line of the picture there's a series of random numbers and letters. This is sent to a telephone which we think has been operating in the botnet for quite a considerable amount of time and has been promoted so that it can intercept these messages and forward it to the command and control. It's possibly used in conjunction with the intercept module that's within the malware. Once it's been verified that the device can send and receive, the device will start to receive templates, which includes the text message lure and the link in there as well. I've taken a snapshot of some of the data we've collected. Here you're looking at a capture relating to unique SMS links that we've captured over about a 3-month period. Devices that are sending SMS spam are rate limited by the command and control, and the rate limit can range between 5 seconds to 2 minutes. Over a 24-hour period, there is an average of about 130 SMS smishing links, although this is probably slightly higher if we account for some infrastructure issues. The phone will deliver SMS messages at a rate of about between 5 and 10 seconds during daylight hours within the country that it's operating in. And this goes all the way up to about every 2 minutes during nighttime hours. I've highlighted Australia here on the second peak. Generally, the SMS campaigns are slightly more aggressive when more countries are being targeted. And at this point, Australia was introduced as a target. Therefore, we see more SMS messages coming out. And the same can be said for the third peak, where several countries are being targeted at once. This gives us a great insight into things that are changing. So if our automation misses something, we can look at the trends here and say, hey, there's a more aggressive campaign going on here. What has changed? We need to investigate. By collecting all the SMS links, it gives us the opportunity to look at the APK distribution. And by the APK, I mean the malicious APK malware, the application that targets the device. Each link will go through several layers of redirection. This could be obfuscated JavaScript, obfuscated PHP, or redirect headers within the HTTP request. They implement this redirection just to prevent users using popular command line tools to reach the download, and it also has some tests to make sure that it's a mobile device that's requesting it and not something else. By gathering these APKs, we can determine that as well as Flubot being distributed by the botnet, it's also being used to distribute other Android malware, the T-bot malware. T-bot, much like Flubot, has the same sort of feature set, but it does not have its own self-propagation method. So we can see the two threat groups here have probably entered into some sort of business relationship, and they're collaborating to both compromise Android devices. And there's also a technique in use called hash busting. Hash busting was quite popular with the malware threat Emotet. And what hash busting does is it allows the threat actors to generate a new hash for each mobile device. So by having lots of different hashes, you then avoid hash-based detection, which makes it more difficult for vendors to detect the malware on a device. So to summarize some of the spamming insights, so we've collected lots of templates over the time we've been emulating. All of them will either imitate a voicemail, a missed phone call, where a voicemail is waiting for the user to download, and also quite popular parcel deliveries, whether that's an expected delivery, a missed delivery, or a delayed delivery. Each of these are being used just to entice the user into clicking the link. All of the smishing links that we've observed so far have been compromised WordPress sites. Again, this could well be a service that the Flubot operators are renting rather than maintaining their own. And at the end of the link, there's a unique hash there. That unique hash relates to the telephone number that they're trying to target. This probably gives the Flubot operators some insights into metrics. It also tracks that telephone number. And although not proven, we have observed the telephone number being targeted several times after that link's been clicked once. So therefore, they might be using that, say, hey, this user's clicked this link before, let's keep sending them more spam. And also we see lots of deliberate spelling mistakes. This isn't down to poor English or the poor language the country that they're targeting. They're doing this to try and avoid detection of their templates. So you can see a few of those examples there. They've altered some of the letters within some of the words, or they've put a random set of letters and numbers in there. And finally, I'm just going to go through the web overlays. This is where the Flubot operators can gain their cache. This is where they target applications on the phone in order to gain credentials. When the device is compromised, it will send a list of installed applications to the command and control. The command and control server will make two decisions: A, where the device is coming from, and B, it will look at the application list to see whether there is an application on there which they want to target. If there's a match, the device will receive an HTML overlay. This HTML is a piece of code that is made to look like the application, but instead of when the user opens the application, instead of the user interacting with the application that they wanted to, they're actually interacting with the HTML overlay as well. Quite a simple technique which can be abused on an Android device. And this is what they use to extract sensitive information. I've put a little bit of code at the bottom there. Don't worry if you don't understand it, but this is where the login, security number, and memorable answer has been targeted on the application, although it's not relating to the picture on the right. By gathering the web overlays, we can get some decent insights as to what's been targeted. There are several countries here that we would expect to see. We've got the UK, Germany, Poland, and Australia. All these countries are generally considered tech savvy. Therefore, they're going to be banking on their computers and they're going to be banking on their mobiles. We see this is consistent with Windows-based banking Trojans as well. We don't see Spain or the UAE quite so often on these lists. There are probably other factors that are influencing this. It could be that the botnet's been rented out to threat actors residing in those countries, or it could just be the fact that Android is more prevalent and therefore it is better to target these countries. And to summarize on the web overlays, so key points again: captures credentials, the HTML overlays the target application, the credentials are exfiltrated via the HTML and they're sent to the C2s. Over the time we've been doing this, we've captured about 80 applications. These applications cover cryptocurrency, banking applications, and email applications, and this is across 7 countries. This figure could be much higher because we have to send the botnet a list of applications, and the one we have is quite significant and well maintained. But if our application's not on their list, we won't get the HTML overlay. Even so, what we do get back is a decent insight to the targeting. And you would have noticed that actually there is a big country missing from this, and that's the US. And to finish, thoughts on future developments. So if we align this with what we see with Windows-based Trojans, we'll certainly see the operations to continue to expand. As I just mentioned, the US has not been targeted yet. We expect at some stage they may want to break into that. But they might be having a lot of success in the countries that they're already targeting, so this might be on the back burner for the moment. We'll also see some adaptations to the botnet to avoid tracking. We've already seen this with the tokenized SMS part of the botnet, where they're now verifying whether the device can actually send SMS messages before enabling it as an SMS botnet. We'll also see new web overlays being introduced. Recently, we saw the WhatsApp application briefly get targeted before it was quickly removed. We're not sure why we removed it. I actually thought it was probably quite a good target. However, maybe it was a bit too aggressive and it was too obvious that the device had been compromised. Who knows? We might see it come back again. And also, I don't think I've quite got the answer on this, and it's probably a topic for discussion at some point. But perhaps we are seeing a shift now away from Windows banking Trojans, whereby it's actually very complicated and not quite so reliable now to inject code into modern day internet browsers, whereby it is actually, even though it is actually much easier just to develop a HTML web overlay for a mobile device where people are more likely to do their banking on their phones now. And that's it from me. I'm pretty pleased I made it through without losing my voice. I hope you found it interesting, and I think we've probably got some time for a few questions.
We do, Graham. So thank you for that. That was fascinating. We've got a question in the chat asking, are there similar SMS bots being deployed to Apple iOS, or I guess if I paraphrase that, is it that Android is a sort of Windows XP and that's why it's been targeted? So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so iOS, no, it's quite hardened. The Android is a bit of a free-for-all with applications. I wouldn't say it's the Windows XP, it's probably the Windows platform. However, it is still quite difficult to compromise it. The user has to go through several phases of allowing permissions to the device. However, once it's on there, I think it's a little bit more difficult to know that you're compromised until you're left with no money in your bank account. The HTML can be adapted to look very convincing. A Windows-based Trojan, you might see a few errors because they're trying to put code into the web browser. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it's XP, but yeah, it's an easier device to target with features.
And in terms of kind of actions on objective from the bad guys here, would you assess that right now they're tinkering with the access that they've got, or do you think there are live campaigns where people are losing money as well as credentials to the bad guys?
Definitely losing money to the bad guys. I think I saw something in the news only today or yesterday, suggesting that millions have been lost through these applications being targeted. I think that was an Australian post. It's unverified, but yeah, I think they are making money out of it, and I think that's possibly why we're not seeing the big ticket countries being targeted just yet.
Yeah. And I guess one last question for you. Obviously, you focused on emulating Flubot for this conversation today. The audience may know that we do a significant amount of botnet emulation, and Secureworks adds to our aperture of what the bad guys are doing. Emotet and Quackbot emulators were both your kind of babies as well. What do you think? How would you describe decision-making criteria around which botnets we're choosing to emulate? What is it that drives you to do this work? And I know it occupies a lot of your time.
Yeah, so I think it was slide 2 or 3. It's definitely prevalence. Flubot for us, I mean, hey, we were receiving these text messages to our personal devices. If that's not a heads up to say, hey, something's happening here, I don't know what is. I don't get that much spam through my email, but if I'm getting these through to my telephone, it's going to be reaching clients. So it's definitely a mixture of prevalence and motivation as well. We've got to look for stuff that's financially motivated. There's a bit of design as well. It helps if there's a botnet design where we can actually participate in it without.
Have there been any unique challenges in actually emulating this, or has it just been similar to the work you've done in the past on the other more traditional botnets?
It's similar to the work that we've done in the past. It's just been able to spot things like the tokenized. The tokenized SMS verifying. It's just recognizing that, having a play of it, say, hey, why are there these weird random numbers and letters? What does that mean? Okay, let's try that out. Let's see what happens. Oh, look, that's what they're trying to do.